Hey, hello everybody, Disciple here with Overwatch Curios. Every so often we get a chance to hear from the developers about some of the crazy things they've experimented with while making the game. From heroes that didn't quite make the cut, to abilities that were simply too overpowered to ever see the light of day, these interviews and features give players more insight to the development process or even concepts that could possibly appear further along the development timeline in some other fashion. Today we're back with another episode of abilities that were cancelled in Overwatch, and we get to take a look at some of the crazy concepts for some of the game's most popular heroes. So the Alchemist is a cancelled hero we've talked about before, and a hero which would later evolve into Ana, the sniper support that we have in game today. But initial concepts had the Alchemist using a wide variety of potions or chemicals to control the flow of the game. However, Jeff Goodman provided more insight into the early development of the Alchemist and also showed us some more abilities that never made it into the final release that we have for Ana. She actually started out as a prototype called the Alchemist. The syringe gun that she has now was always there. One of the early abilities of the Alchemist was that he or she would drink this potion that would make them jump really high and really fast. But it was only for 1 or 2 seconds, a huge burst so that you could hit it and super jump somewhere really far. It was sort of interesting, but it had a lot of problems. While Jeff doesn't expand upon the problems this jump potion caused, it's easy to understand how. Mobility is one of the strongest survival mechanics in a shooter, so pairing vertical and horizontal mobility with any support becomes a bit of a gray area for the people working on balance. Mercy, for example, is extremely powerful, especially at lower ranks where players are less mechanically skilled, because tracking and hitting a moving target dashing across the sky can be very challenging. However, it also seems like this concept was at least revisited in some way with the newest iteration of Mercy's ultimate, Valkyrie. The difference between this and the Alchemist's original potion, however, is access. Valkyrie is a powerful tool that can quickly pull Mercy out of harm's way, however the counterplay behind it is that it's tied to her ultimate and that there's plenty of downtime when you can fight her without worrying about her flying away too far. Now imagine playing a flanker who specializes in infiltrating or diving back lines to eliminate priority targets, only to realize that every time you do so, one of the people that you really need to kill was able to drink a potion and jump really far away instantly. On top of that, there's been several instances of heroes being able to reach unintended spots on the maps with their mobility mechanics, so in the end Overwatch kinda had to pull the cork out of the super jump ability for Ana. On the same note, Jeff also mentions another cancelled ability for the original concept of Ana. There was also an idea where that potion would provide a really long heal over time. You would drink it, then walk into battle and survive because you were healing the whole time. Now this ability is certainly interesting, and it brings to light a pretty important issue. How do you accurately balance self-healing on a healer? For example, Mercy and Zenyatta can both regenerate health after being out of combat for a few seconds, but what if you had an ability more like Lucio's where they can actively heal themselves? In one scenario where it's attached to the flask, you have a healer that can either actively reposition and restore any health lost from a flank and escape unharmed, or on the other side can use that same potion to jump right into combat and support the team while actively sustaining their own health during the fight. Jeff describes the heal as really long, so you still encounter that same situation of enabling a support to play a bit more aggressively. In the end, that flask would end up becoming the biotic grenade that we have today, which still gives Ana a form of self-sustain that she lacked comparatively, while also some built-in support in the form of healing mitigation for the enemy team, and a good amount of boost to her own team, which initially empowered the tank meta. Now, one of the most interesting cancelled abilities we've ever heard of comes to us from Lucio. Apparently, in the early stages of design, Lucio's original ultimate slowed time for everyone that wasn't him, including his own team. Quote, fun fact, Lucio's first ult used to be a total time scale for everyone in the match, except for Lucio. Probably the most powerful ultimate we've ever heard of, although Jeff doesn't say exactly how slow everyone else became. Just imagine being able to apply a global mace slow to everybody in the game, however. Now, given Lucio's high mobility, he probably turned into the ultimate killing machine while enemies just danced around in slow motion, trying to wait for things to turn to normal. Jeff goes on to say that the biggest issue behind it, however, was actually the effect it had on Lucio's own team. For example, if you've just respawned and are trying to rush back to defend a point and your friendly Lucio ults, suddenly the game slows to a crawl for you and you're just frustrated waiting to get back to the point at a reasonable speed. In the end, the Overwatch team realized that, while a cool concept, the global time crawl just really had no place inside of Overwatch. I do think it's an interesting mechanic that could be interesting to add to a single target long cooldown or ultimate ability in the future for some hero, maybe that encapsulates some area around the point for instance, but it's clearly not something everybody should have to sit through anytime the enemy support uses his ultimate. Now, while it's not a cancelled ability per se, game director Jeff Kaplan in a Reddit AMA brought up Titan, which was a cancelled game and can shed a lot of light on what Overwatch potentially could have had. Titan was a cancelled shooter MMO that Blizzard spent several years working on developing. When the project was finally cancelled, the Titan team shifted focus to a new project, which would later become Overwatch, and brought some of those concepts from their previous game to this new project. Reaper was one of those heroes who actually came from previous Titan concepts. Also known as Reaper in Titan, he originally wielded a crossbow instead of the dual Hellfire shotguns that he wields today. Reaper having a completely different attack variation would have seriously altered his playstyle in pretty dramatic ways. The current Reaper's kit is built entirely around getting in close and dealing huge amounts of damage, and by doing so his passive lifesteal allows him to continue the reaping. Now, it's hard to imagine exactly what this would have meant in terms of gameplay, but with a long range source of damage, Reaper definitely wouldn't have needed two mobility mechanics to close distances. By handing Reaper crossbows and giving him a lifesteal mechanic, it actually makes him seem a lot more like a demon hunter, say from Diablo, which would actually be a really cool concept to have in Overwatch. Someone who uses more of a bow type weapon, but is much more about dueling and fighting at a medium range than what we have in Hanzo currently. And while we're on the topic of Titan, Jeff further expanded on the topic by talking about Tracer and her origins as well. He said, Blink, Recall, and Pulse Bomb were all designed for the jumper, as well as dual-wielding machine pistols. At the time, I was playing tons of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, and my loadout was M16 primary, G18 secondary. The jumper guns were my G18s. The jumper was one of the original class archetypes designed for Titan, and while her default design was to have dual-wielding machine pistols, Jeff goes on to explain how that too changed. But because Titan was an MMO, the jumper started getting tons of progression abilities, covering a whole level up system. So the jumper got shotguns and knockbacks, etc. It was very cluttered and confused. When we simplified for Overwatch, we chose only the abilities that worked well together and then created a hero rather than a class. Tracer had a personality, an origin, etc. That's what made her work. So conceptually at one time, Tracer had all of her current abilities, but the option to wield shotguns, which to be honest is pretty horrifying. Tracer is already capable of high damage output at close range, but if you imagine placing something like Reaper shotguns onto Tracer, you're bound to have some nightmares. More interesting than that though is Jeff mentioning how at one point in time, she had crowd control effects such as knockbacks. Boops can be really effective means of controlling the battlefield. Lucio, for example, thrives on maps where his ability to reposition enemies off the map can allow him to aggressively contest a point while supporting his team. So if you were to pair a mechanic like that and a hero like Tracer, you can create a lot of chaos. A godlike Tracer player with such abilities could blink into the fray to look for an environmental knockback kill, secure a second kill quickly with Pulse Bomb, and then recall back out of the fight seconds later, and fight a pretty imbalanced team fight. It's pretty fun to imagine those changes as a fan of playing Tracer myself, but any variation of crowd control combined to an already mobile and volatile hero would have just been insane for people to deal with. And that's just about going to do it for this episode of our Cancelled Abilities series. We love getting to take the time to look back at the development of Overwatch, and we hope that you all enjoy these stories and theories as much as we enjoy being able to put them out. Now let's just exclude the old Lucio ult for obvious reasons, but which of these changes would you find the most fun to play with had they made it to the live servers today? Make sure to let us know down in the comments section below. And I also just wanted to take a little bit of time to remind you guys that I stream pretty much every day on twitch.tv/disciple from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, and I've been really working on interacting with you guys in the community to try and bring you all sorts of cool things. We've done things like play some custom Overwatch maps together, or do other sort of viewer games, and I really like to answer any questions that you guys have about the channels, about YouTube, or about streaming pretty much any time. So if you guys come by the stream and find me, then I would love to chat with you guys and have a good time playing the game together as well. I've also been having a lot of fun playing PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, and if you guys like that game or want to check it out, then make sure you stop by the stream. Anyway, thanks so much for watching the video, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and until next time, peace.